Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Sperging Out Podcast. My name is Mitch Grace, and I am the author of the book Growing Up with Asperger's Lessons Learned and Shareable Wisdom, available on Amazon on paperback and Kindle formats, as well as Audible on audiobook formats. And I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Extraordinaire.
Hello, thanks for having me. I am a therapist for adults and teenagers with autism, and I'm happy to be here.
And we are happy to have you here as well. And we just did an episode about driving, but there's also another topic we wanted to lean in from that, and that's just traveling in general.
Yes, going to different places and interacting with different cultures and people.
Yes, and different parts of maybe your own state, maybe your own metroplex, and then later on this episode we will cover how to go to a different country, because especially on your own, because that can be intimidating in and of itself. Especially if you're going to a place that doesn't have the same native language or official language that your home country, state, etc. does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I guess let's start small, just like traveling out of your town.
Okay, so Google Maps is your friend.
Yes. Oh, God bless Google Maps. I don't know how people got on before Google Maps.
They used maps and very rudimentary GPS systems.
I can't imagine. I've never had to ask for directions in my entire life.
Yeah,
Since the day I was smart enough to drive a car, I was like, Google tells me where to go.
Yes. So I guess on that point, I think it is good to have a general sense of a direction. Where is north? Where is south? Where is east? Where is west? And then also, for the United States, we have the interstate system where there are interstates across most of the continental United States, and start in Alaska and Hawaii. I know it's a bit different, but we have interstates that are public roads, so you don't have to use toll tags for, that go north and south, and then we also have separate interstates that go east and west. And then each state has their own individually numbered and named highways. And then some have toll roads that can get you around a bit quicker that you have to pay for, but that's a whole other thing. But yes, use Google Maps, but also just have a general knowledge of, hey, okay, if Google Maps doesn't stops working, I know, okay.
If your phone dies while you're driving, you can still find where you are and then get directions to where you need to go.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's honestly an important skill, no matter where you live, really. If you rely on Google Maps, which I just said I do, if your phone dies or for whatever reason you can't use the map, be able to tell where you are by the street names or what town you're in.
Yes.
Or be aware of that while you're using Google Maps too, obviously.
Yes.
And then if you need directions, be able to pull over and just ask.
That too. And
gas stations are always a good spot to ask for directions.
Grocery stores.
Yeah.
And then, so when it comes to traveling outside of your hometown, have a destination in mind, but a specific destination, because that way you can be like, all right, as long as I'm going towards this, I know I'm on the right place.
And know what direction you're driving in. So like if you're going south to a town, even if for whatever reason you get lost or you lose, you can always be like, well, I'm still going south. So eventually I'll get there.
Yes, like for example, if you're going to a different town because they have a unique store that piques your interest, or a grocery store that doesn't have what you're needing that specific day, just have a specific place in mind, and then that way you can follow the directions given to you.
Street signs.
Yes.
Like unless you're driving in the middle of the desert or somewhere in the middle of nowhere, there'll be street signs telling you what's all around and where you're going.
Exactly. So, and then just go during, I guess, depending on when you decide to go, like if it's after work hours, traffic's going to be bad. If it's during lunch hours, traffic might be a little bit worse.
Timing, if you're taking a say a 3-hour drive or like a longer trip, more than just driving to the store.
Yes.
Try to time it when it's not rush hour traffic.
Yes.
I actually, whenever I take a trip that's longer than 3 hours, if it's possible, it depends on what time you're supposed to be there. I always try to take it at night.
Yeah.
Because if you leave at like 9 p.m., there's no one on the road really.
It's true.
Not many people, so it's a lot easier of a drive.
And then depending on where you live, like if it's a more religious area or if you're traveling to a more religious area, you might want to time it on the weekends as well, because Sunday church services.
Yes, a lot of people are driving for Sunday church services.
Yes, or they're either going to their service or they're leaving their service and they're going to, no pun intended, God knows where. So I'm glad you laughed at that. So yeah, timing is important, and then make sure you have like stuff with you. Make sure your phone has a full charge. Make sure. If your car breaks down, make sure you have the necessary tools to at least get you up and running again, or you can call to have your get a tow truck or something.
Yeah,
and
I
then-
mean, for normal stuff, just first off, have a car charger for your phone. That's always
Yes.
helpful.
Yes.
I mean, my phone, the only time I charge my phone is when it's in the car these days.
Ah.
I always charge it while I'm driving, and I drive so much I don't need to charge it outside of driving. But that's a good idea, and then just making sure you have enough gas. The tools and stuff is always important in general, but like the main things you check before going on a trip is, do I have enough gas to get there? Is my phone charged?
Exactly. And then so that's if your trip is like a few hours.
Yeah, if you're going to a different town, also be aware that like even within the same state or location, different towns do have different cultures and driving styles. So
That's
like
true, yeah.
if you drive to a different town, sometimes the roads will feel different.
Yeah, like some
they'll
roads
be narrow or gravelly or more lanes or less lanes.
better maintained or less maintained.
Yeah, so just be prepared for there to be like a different feel to driving in the area. Like personally, there's some towns near where we are, where I drive there, and it's immediately like the culture of driving is different, where people are just more aggressive about driving, or less aggressive, and you immediately notice it, where you're like, oh, people here drive different.
Yes.
Parking here is more of a pain in the butt.
Yes.
There are little things like that you don't really think about until you're there, and you're like suddenly like, oh yeah, this is different. So if you're someone who has special needs, it may be a little more difficult for you to acclimatize to a different culture, different type of driving.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind, that if you're going somewhere new, people might drive differently there. Parking might be done differently there. The roads may be different feeling to drive down there. That sort of stuff.
Exactly. And then also the different different police in different towns, obviously. If you're going from a big city to a small town, the cops are going to be very different. Like something you can get away with in a big city, you won't be able to get away with in a small town, and oftentimes vice versa.
Yeah.
So like some small town cops may be more strict on speeding limits. Other cops will just give you a warning. So you got to be mindful of that, because there are speed traps do exist when you're traveling. Like there are instances where, like, I remember I was driving back from I was with a friend, and we were driving back from just a vacation, and we passed through a small town, and we got pulled over by a small town cop because there was a sign that went from like the speed limit went from 60 to 40, not 60 to 50, and of course the cop got us and pulled us over. And so the cop left us off with a warning, to be fair. But yeah, those things do happen, so you have to be mindful of that. And if you're in long drives, it can be really easy to just go into quote unquote autopilot.
Yeah, to zone out and then just realize you're driving 20 over the speed limit, not realize it.
Yeah, and then you realize, hey, I just went over a speed bump in the school zone, but then you realize the school doesn't have speed bumps. So yeah, you don't zone out.
Yeah, in my experience, police officers that are not stationed in a city but in between cities tend to give out more tickets.
Yeah,
probably because a police officer in a city center can give 50 speeding tickets in a single day easy. Whereas if you're a cop in the middle of in between two cities, you got like 5 chances to give out a speeding ticket, so you're going to be a little more strict.
And then county cops, then you got the sheriffs depending on the state, then you got the constables depending on your state, and then you got marshals.
Be aware of how you're driving and make sure you're following the driving laws, even in between cities, because there are still police officers that give out tickets outside of the towns.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's if a few hours. If your destination is a few hours, and like you can it's a there and back trip, where that can all be done in like a day. Let's transition into
states, crossing state lines.
Yes, it's crossing state lines, and also if the destination is where you're staying the night at.
Okay, yeah.
So I remember once where I had to book a hotel room because I was going to be staying in a different in a different state. And so I don't know about you, but if you think this is good advice, but check-in time, when you book your hotel reservation, first off, make sure the hotel has good reviews. Make sure you Google them. Make sure that the hotel is in decent enough, it's close enough to a gas station or a grocery store or maybe some restaurants that you're interested in visiting.
Try to get a hotel near where you want to be.
Yes. And then make sure you know when your check-in and check-out time is.
Check-out especially. Check-in's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
If you show up late to your check-in, they don't care. Most places, like 99% of hotels, will not care.
Yeah.
But check-out, you got to be out of that room by check-out.
Yes.
That is a big one.
So what I personally try to do is I try to like plan my drive to the point where it's like, all right, check-in is, let's say it's at 3 o'clock. I'm going to leave at noon. I'm going to get lunch at 1:30, and that'll take me an hour. And then I'll get back on the road, and then I'll be there at like between 3:30 and 4.
Yeah, always shoot to be a little after the check-in time, because sometimes it takes them a little longer to get your room ready for a new person if it's a busy time.
Yes, exactly. And busy times are like summer, definitely holidays.
Holidays, which is a lot of times when people are driving these distances.
Yes, and then make sure that I remember one time I was driving with my family. We were on our way to Yellowstone, and we had to stop in, I think, Colorado. Maybe Colorado. Maybe it was Wyoming, one of those two states. And check-in, I think we got a specific room, and so I think our check-in time was like at 9 p.m. Okay. But we were late because we hit traffic, and so if it is safe, make sure you have the hotel's phone number handy so you can call them and say, hey, I'm going to be late, but I am on my way. And then, again, like you said, 9 times out of 10, the hotel will be like, okay, cool, show up when you show up.
No big deal.
Yeah.
As long as their front office isn't closed. And if they are going to be closed, that's when you need to call to make sure that they leave the key out for you, or else you will be stuck.
Yes, exactly, and we don't want that.
Yeah. When it comes to these longer distance drives, I guess it's still important, obviously, to top off your gas and make sure your battery's charged on your phone and everything. Check the weather. That's a big one.
Ooh, good one.
So for a 3-hour drive, the weather might matter, but for if you're driving 10 hours, you're going to be staying somewhere, make sure to check the weather before you leave. At the end of the day, if it's, a huge thunderstorm and you have to be there, it's not a lot you can do. But at least it's good to be aware, so you're prepared and ready for it. Also,
in terms, I want to double down on the weather and say, check the weather where you're going to be staying, temperature-wise. If you're going from a place that's 80, and then the place you're going to be at is 60, and you packed no pairs of pants, well, I hope you can tolerate colder temperatures.
Yeah, make sure you bring a jacket, that kind of stuff.
Yes, and then the opposite is also true. If you're driving to a beach and you're coming from the cold, and all you have are heavy winter clothes, buddy, you're going to be in for a rough time.
Yeah. But yeah, just be aware of where you're going and what you'll need to bring with you. And for these longer drives, it's important to keep focused and awake, so make sure you get a good night's sleep. And if you're tired, make sure you have some coffee or something to make sure you're focused on the drive.
Yes.
Because like we were talking about earlier, it's really easy to zone out during these long drives and just go into autopilot mode.
Yes.
Which is fine. But you still need to be aware and focused enough that if something happens, you're ready to hit the brakes or slow down or speed up. Whatever you need to do to avoid any sort of collisions or accidents.
Yes.
And to make sure you don't miss a turn and end up driving to the wrong place.
Exactly.
That's always the worst.
Oh, gosh.
Especially in between cities. A lot of times the highway or the roads, you miss a turn and it's going to be 30 minutes before you can even get back around to where the turn was.
Oh, it's the worst.
Yeah, I hate that.
Hate it. It's the worst. The worst, a common... I wouldn't say common, but excuse me. Something that I've done more than once is that I'll either be talking to the person who I'm driving with, and I'll miss a turn because I'll be focused on that conversation.
I do it all the time.
Or I will be, what's the word? I'll be listening to music. I'll be getting really into it, and then I'll miss my turn.
You'll be spitting the lyrics to Rap God, and you'll miss your turn.
Yep. Lose yourself. Be humble. There's another rap song, Gangster's Paradise, Rapper's Delight. I definitely know hip hop. I definitely do.
But yeah, it's definitely just make sure you're aware and ready to
yes,
you're in there. You're not just totally zoned out.
Yes. Do we want to go over? So we've talked about driving. Do we want to go over different alternative methods of ground transportation, like trains and buses?
I guess I feel like those are a little more simple. If you're taking a long distance bus trip, then I guess it matters because there's a lot of logistics that go into a bus trip. Make sure you have the right bus ticket.
Yeah.
Make sure you're taking the right bus lines.
Yes.
Understand that the buses aren't going to arrive at the exact right times.
Yeah.
So you may miss a bus and have to wait at a bus stop.
This ain't
transferring between buses.
Yeah, this ain't Europe and Asia.
Unfortunately.
Or at least where we are.
That's most of the U.S. unless you're in the big cities in New York. Nothing arrives on time here.
Yeah, and then with trains, like I've heard in the East Coast, like you can genuinely take a train from like Philadelphia to New York City or something.
Yeah, there's some pretty good train lines. Trains are a lot simpler. Like, just make sure you're on the right train line. Make sure if you have to transfer, you know when to transfer.
Yes.
Other than that, really, trains are simple. Sit on the train and wait. Have some music, have a book, something to keep you occupied.
Yeah, play your Nintendo Switch if you like games, or your Steam Deck if you want to play PC games on the go.
And bus rides are just a little more messy because they don't tend to arrive on time. They tend to be all over the place.
Yeah, so let me ask you something.
And you may have to walk between one bus stop to another location to get picked up by a different bus.
Yes, and then also make sure you don't have to use the restroom both while you're on the bus or train, because you might not have the option to do that.
Yeah, you'll have to wait for a stop, and those may be few and far between if it's a long train line.
I'm curious, what do you know of any services where like you can like pay, like not necessarily like a
long distance Uber?
Yeah.
I don't know of any. There's plenty of services like Uber, but that's within the city, and that's for, like if your kiddo or you have special needs and it makes it difficult for you to travel, there's actually a lot of free services that your Social Security will cover, like Uber. There is an Uber service that will pick you up from your home and drive you where you need to go for free.
Wow.
So do look into that if you need that within the city. But if we're talking about like longer distance, I don't know of any services like that.
Okay, because editor, you're gonna need to censor this because it's very local. So there's this service called, and it's essentially like it's a quote unquote luxury bus where like you're on a bus. It takes you from either and my family use that to come up to the where we live, which
that's nice.
And so I'm just curious if you knew of any different service like that.
No? I've never heard of anything like that.
Yeah. Watch someone in the comments is going to be like, oh yeah, they're called trains and normal buses. because like something I've always curious.
It's called an airplane, you idiot.
Something I've always been curious about doing is like, what if I got an RV and then I hired someone to just drive me to and from like long distance places? Like, is that a thing?
I mean, like,
that's kind of
if you buy your own RV and hire a driver, yeah.
Okay, can you?
Rich millionaire man.
I would rent the RV.
Yeah, it's like hiring a limo driver, but you're hiring them to drive an RV.
Because I've heard that's like what certain stand-up comedians do, where like they have a specialized RV, and then they have a driver to take them to their destinations.
It's like sports teams do the same thing. They have a private bus with a private driver that drives them from the airport to the game or to their hotel or wherever they're going.
True.
So I assume comedians do the same thing. Anyone that has to travel for work probably does the same thing.
True. Very true. But like, I'm just curious if that was possible to do for like recreational reasons. Like if I want to go, I don't know, Nashville.
I mean, technically, I'm sure you could, but I assume it'd be really expensive.
True.
I assume unless you have a lot of money or making a lot of money on your trip, it's probably easier just to take public transit or drive or an airplane even.
True. Speaking of airplanes,
before we get to airplanes, let's talk about crossing state lines while you're driving.
Okay, good idea.
It's important to understand that within the United States, there are different things you're allowed to cross state lines with and not allowed to cross state lines with.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so it's important to just make sure to look that up if you're crossing state lines.
Yes.
You don't want to be caught trying to illegally transfer alcohol from, I don't know, Arizona to Ohio, or not Ohio, Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma is the one with the really restrictive like alcohol laws.
And then of course,
and every state's different, and they're all wild and make no sense. So like, you can't take pine nuts out of New Mexico.
Why?
It's their national like export, so you have to like, or not national, you know what I mean? State export. So you have to like pay special taxes to take pine nuts out of there, piñon. So if you try to just take pine nuts and leave in your like luggage, they might stop you and be like, no.
Okay, well, and then of course the
drugs and alcohol, obviously.
Yeah, the marijuana thing. The difference.
Oh yes.
Yeah, marijuana. If like Colorado, for example, their laws are a bit more lax, but some places like Oklahoma, or actually I don't know,
Georgia. I mean, there's a lot of states
that aren't that even recreationally.
Southern ones that are a little specific about what you're allowed to bring in and out.
Exactly. So, I mean, when it comes to crossing state lines, I mean, have you encountered that many like state border patrol? Because it's like, how do you? Because it's like,
I assume there are such things, but I have not. But I also don't drive across state lines very often.
That's fair, because
I know when like you're driving, out of the U.S. into Mexico or Canada, you have to.
Oh yeah, like those are national borders. But like, because you said New Mexico's state like piñon thing.
Yeah.
Like if I take one, bring it to Texas, Like, is there someone at the Texas border that's going to stop me and
Probably
check?
not, but there might be some sort of checkpoints. I'm not sure, actually. I'm just talking about legally. Just be aware of those things.
Because I've driven to and from Oklahoma a number of times, and it's just there's no checkpoints.
Yeah, I know I've driven through New Mexico without going through a checkpoint, so I know it's not like a requirement.
Yeah, so that's
but it's an important thing to know.
Oh yeah, of course. Like different states have different laws regarding a variety of substances, legal and not so legal.
And then obviously you're crossing country lines always.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's just like you're gonna have to go through a checkpoint.
Yeah. But if you're not going to those places for those reasons, then you won't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Like if you're like, hey, I'm going to New Mexico to visit family, then going back, then you're not gonna have to worry about it.
Well, there's still some. Yeah, you're right. Well, like if you're driving to Mexico or Canada, like food, there's a lot of food items you're not allowed to transfer between.
Oh, really?
You wouldn't think about it, but like, they have pretty strict rules.
Huh, I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
What
so just Google it.
Yeah, Google it. And
there's always those videos and people like at the checkpoint chugging a bottle of wine because they're like, it's just normal wine. And it's like, still can't transfer it across the border, buddy. Mm-hmm. Chug. Same with cakes. I know a lot of baked goods. There's like rules for that.
Huh.
I don't know why.
That's different.
Maybe you can bake in like drugs or something.
I
honestly couldn't tell you.
I
just know there are rules for it.
Drugs in the cake. That'd be interesting. Yeah. So do you want to talk about planes now?
Yeah, let's transition to like longer like flights. Just flights in general.
Yes.
So booking a flight is an interesting experience. It depends on who you're booking it through and how you book it. No matter what people tell you, never book the non-refundable plane tickets. I don't know why everyone thinks that's a good idea, but you're saving like $50 and putting yourself at a lot of risk if you miss your flight.
Yeah.
Or if anything goes wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Get the tickets you can refund, so if you do need to refund them, you aren't regretting it.
Exactly.
I can't stress it enough. Everyone in my entire life, even my family, have always been like, oh yeah, get the cheaper non-refundable ones. Don't.
Yeah.
Peace of mind is worth $50.
Exactly. You can't put a price on peace of mind.
If you're already paying for a plane ticket to fly to a different place, you should have enough money to get the refundable tickets.
Exactly. And then, okay, so when it comes to the day of your flight on your airport, and let's just for right now, let's say it's a domestic flight, and then we'll talk about international flights later because there are a few other things we need to talk about regarding that. So let's just say you're flying from California to New York. Fuck it. The day of your flight, it's a stereotypical thing where it's like, let's say your flight is at 9 a.m. and your parents are at 4 a.m. It's like, oh my gosh, we gotta go to the airport. Oh my gosh, we gotta go there now. Oh my gosh. No. That is a lie. That is such a lie. I have had flights where I've gotten where my flight is at 9, I've gotten to the airport at 7 and even 8 a.m. and I've been fine. So no, this whole waking up at 5 a.m. No, don't do that.
In my experience, unless you're traveling for like a holiday where there's going to be 10 billion people at the airport.
Good point. Yeah.
As long as you arrive like 30 minutes before your flight, you'll probably be fine.
Yeah.
I would go with an hour just to be safe. It's better to, show up a little too early and have to wait than miss your flight entirely. But the people who like show up 3 hours early are crazy. Unless it's like Christmas or something, you don't need to show up that early for anything.
So something you can do to make the whole check-in process easier is that there's this thing called like global entry or something where
I've never actually used that, but it lets you just skip the security checkpoint essentially by going through like a fast lane.
Like some airport, depends on the airport because our local airports have it, but I've traveled to airports that don't have it. Smaller airports. There's this thing called a TSA pre-check, and so like if you have if you do this global entry, global citizen sort of thing, you have to fill out. I haven't done it myself, but I've heard you have to fill out a paperwork. You have to give them some specific information, like your social.
You have to give them a lot of personal information and identifying stuff.
Yes, you may have to do fingerprints as well, but don't quote me on that. And then essentially, this puts you on the TSA pre-check list automatically. And then I think you may have. I don't know if it's permanent, but I think you may have to renew it like once every couple of years or whatever, kind of like a passport, which we'll get to later in the episode. But this will let you just say, "Oh, hey, TSA pre-check. That's the fast line. I'm gonna go do that." And then the TSA does this thing, and then you're on your way. So you get to skip all that security.
Okay.
And then typically, there are certain days throughout the week that airports are busier, like weekends, for example.
Obviously, yeah.
So if your flight's on like a Tuesday and it's at 10 a.m., if you get there at 9, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. And just some other like little logistics things that people tend to forget. If you're driving to the airport, you'll probably have to pay for parking for however long you're away.
Or if you just want to Uber to and from the airport.
Yeah, luckily airport parking's pretty cheap. But yeah, Uber is now, with the advent of Uber and what's the other one? Lyft. You can taxi to the airport for like $50 and then save money in the long run because you won't have your car sitting in the parking for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And they charge you usually per day. The charges are usually pretty cheap at most airports, but still, Uber is probably cheaper and just less of a hassle.
Exactly. Know what you're. Bear in mind the size of your suitcase to make sure
how much luggage you're allowed to take on, whatever comes with your ticket. Because some places you get free carry-on, some places you don't, and then your carry-on has to be a specific size.
Oh yeah.
Just make sure you know all the rules before you pack your bags and plan, because you don't want to show up and find out you can't take your luggage on the plane at the last minute. That's a nightmare.
Exactly.
And then also make sure you know what you can and can't bring on the plane.
Yeah.
No hand lotion. You're going to make a bomb out of that, apparently. I didn't make the rules. I just know what they are.
One time this is a true story. One time I was in Cuba, and I was flying back to the United States from Cuba from Havana. And the Cuban airport had all these lists of things you can't bring on there. And one of the things that they crossed out were handguns and hand grenades.
Yeah, I try not to bring those in the airplane.
Yes, yeah, same here. I mean, I don't want to, but unless, I just want to start a Liam Neeson movie.
I feel like there was a comedian, I can't remember which one, had a whole bit about hair dryers because you can't take hair dryers in airplanes. Where he was like hijacking the plane, and he's like, "I'm gonna mess up your hair so bad if you don't divert this plane right now. Your hair will never be the same."
Never be the same. So yes, we've covered getting to and from the airport, how much time you need for the airport.
Buying tickets is another one.
Oh yes, we forgot about that.
It's kind of a pain in the butt because every airport does it differently. There's some websites that will like put all the tickets together so you can kind of find the cheapest flight. Google Flights actually does a really good job of comparing flights and giving you the cheapest cost.
Yeah.
And you can filter it by like what flights, what companies you're willing to fly with, how much stuff you're bringing, what times you want your flights, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. The trick I've learned is, well, for me personally, I just go to the airline. Like if I already know what airline I want to fly with for whatever reason, I just go straight to them.
That's true. I like using Google because it gives me the choice between airlines and gives me like comparisons.
Excuse me.
Comparisons of costs of like flights. Because sometimes flights are cheap because you have like a layover. And
true.
No one layovers suck.
Yeah.
If you have to do a layover, do it. But like if you don't. It's not fun.
And then
and actually, I guess that's really about it. Really, it's just making sure the destinations are right, the times are good for you.
And then depending on your flight, make sure you have something to do. Like bring a book, listen to music. Make sure you have good headphones.
Podcast. Yes, bring headphones. Don't be that guy listening to music on his phone without headphones.
Yeah, seriously.
Everyone else on the plane will hate you.
Yes. And then if it's bring a video game console, portable or otherwise, like a Steam Deck.
Yeah, if you're bringing a baby, put them on like the check luggage. You don't want to bring them on the plane. That's a joke. Don't do that.
But I mean, on that subject, if you are traveling with a kid, try your best to keep them quiet.
Yeah.
Don't be one of those parents that like lets the kid cry and just ignores them.
Yeah, I know it can be literally impossible at times with kids. So
but
try your best.
Yeah, because here's the thing: if you're bringing a child onto a toddler onto a plane, everyone on that plane is automatically going to hate you. But just try your best to keep them quiet. Because there have been instances where I've been on flights where I've seen toddlers come aboard and I didn't hear them cry once, and then I've heard the opposite where toddlers cry the entire time, and I wanted to blow my brains out. So, and then if you have a small child, don't let them kick the seat or mess with other passengers. That's just standard etiquette. Just the fact that some parents have forgotten that makes me want to go on a rampage. Makes me want to spurg out even.
If a kid kicks the back of my seat, I'm turning around. I'm kicking the kid.
Yes.
I'm kidding, but
yes.
I've never had that unfortunate experience. I've had the experience where I've had someone lean their chair back so far it's pushing against me behind them.
Oh, wow.
And I have to be like, hey, can you sit forward?
Don't be
Don't be afraid to tell someone that, by the way. You're both stuck in that airplane. They can't What are they gonna do? Say no, and then have everyone else in the airplane look at them? Come on.
And then, depending on the flight, you may have snacks, you may have food, you may have in-flight entertainment options, you may have free Wi-Fi, you may have Wi-Fi you have to pay for.
And to be clear, the menu with the alcohol, that costs money. Don't think that stuff's free.
Exactly.
Sometimes it looks like it's free, just like the rest of the drinks. It's not.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes you have to pay for internet. If you're on a business trip and you know you're going to have to use the internet while flying, you may have to pay for that.
Yeah, and then I'm sure your company will cover it if they know you're going on.
Yeah.
And then if your flight offers like proper meals and whatnot, don't expect a 4-star Michelin meal. It's passable.
Like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is pretty nice. It's better than what most flights give you food-wise.
Yeah.
So anything better than a bag of peanuts is a plus for me.
I mean, that's also another good point. You can bring your own snacks. You can bring, on most flights, you can bring your own food and snacks, and like if you want to make yourself a sandwich, you want to cut yourself up some fruit.
You can always buy
beforehand.
stuff in the airport while you're getting on the plane too. It
True.
might be a little expensive, but if you
yeah.
need just like a bag of chips, like $2 ain't nothing.
Yeah, fuck it.
So more specifically, if you have stimulus issues because you're special needs, and this may be the first time you're flying on an airplane, it's important to know that like there's a pressure. The cabin is pressurized, which you feel.
Yep.
Your ears will pop, especially during takeoff.
Oh god, I hate that.
There's definitely a feeling to being on a plane that's hard to describe.
It's like the air's thinner. First off.
Yeah.
It's thinner, but it also feels like slightly muggy. It's weird.
Yeah, it's thinner, but it's a little more. Yeah, you're right. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, it's very. It's colder. It's gonna be colder. And then so make sure you dress warmly. Oh, and when the plane lands, don't clap. Don't clap. Why do people do that?
I've never even seen that happen. I've been on a lot of flights and I've never had them clap.
I've seen that happen.
I would make fun of them.
I've seen that happen. I have seen that happen.
But yeah, and also be prepared that like takeoff and landing is rough every time. Like not like dangerous rough, but there is turbulence during takeoff and landing on any plane. And then it's just nature. And
there's turbulence during the flight.
Yes, and don't worry. Turbulence might seem scary, but it's really standard. You're in a ginormous airplane. Slight cloud is going to cause it to shake a little, and you're going to feel it, but doesn't mean the plane's going down.
Yes. So getting used to, the planes are going to make a lot of noise, like during takeoff, during landing, during the normal flight. And for me, personally, I tend to get a little jolty whenever I hear these noises start and stop because I'm like, oh god, what's that? But it's all standard stuff. This something I like to keep in the back of my brain is that statistically, flying in an airplane is the safest mode of transportation.
Yes. Every other mode of transportation is more dangerous statistically.
Yes. So, and then these pilots, the planes are so advanced now that I'm sure pilots are going to be offended when I say this, but they don't have to do a whole lot.
No, most modern passenger planes, are the big ones, are just autopilot.
Yes.
The pilot has controls during, I guess, technically taxiing and takeoff, and that's it. Not even landing most of the time anymore. But yeah, it's all almost entirely automated, and it's very safe.
And so, yeah, keep that in the back of your brain. And then, if you need to take like a relaxer, maybe you could get your doctor to prescribe you one.
Yeah, some people who have plane anxiety get like Xanax or other sort of medicine to help them with like nausea, especially if you get motion sick. If you get motion sick or car sick, make sure you get something before you get an airplane, because almost certainly you will get sick on the airplane, just like you get car sick if you get car sick.
And then if you're afraid of heights, don't sit in the windows, sit in the aisle seats.
Yeah.
And then
if you have to pee a lot, sit in the aisle seat too.
Yes. And
don't be that person.
Oh, if you don't like noise, because there's going to be noise throughout the flight.
Yeah, so you can hear the air circulating in the pressurized cabin.
Yeah, you can hear the engines.
So definitely bring like earbuds or
headphones,
noise
canceling ones.
Yeah, or even if you don't want to listen to music or have any other audio, just bring like
earplugs.
Earplugs.
Yeah.
Whatever you think will make you more comfortable.
Yes. Let me ask: have you ever slept on a plane?
No.
Can you sleep on a plane?
I mean, yes, you can. Like people can.
Well, let me ask you.
I can't because I have insomnia. That's the main thing.
Oh well.
I don't sleep in my bed at night most nights.
Oh my.
But yeah, no. I mean, you can sleep on a plane. There's nothing wrong with it. A lot of people do. They have the neck pillows specifically for sleeping on airplanes.
The reason I ask is because I can't sleep in a car. I cannot sleep on a bus. I cannot sleep on a plane.
Yeah, neither can I.
I need. It's not that I need to spread out, but it's the fact that I feel like I need to spread out.
Yeah, you are kind of cramped in most flights, unless you have like a really expensive flight. Expect it to be a little tight with the leg room.
Exactly. So, and then, most airplanes will provide pillows and blankets, but if you want to bring your own, go ahead.
Yeah, I would recommend bringing your own.
Yeah, and so
if you want them.
Exactly, and then, what else are we missing regarding the plane itself? The noises that a plane makes, those are normal, unless you see something on fire, in which case, well.
I mean, if anything, if there's ever a serious situation on the plane, you will get an intercom announcement, or a flight attendant will tell everyone.
Yeah.
They don't keep it a secret.
That's true.
Like you'll know if there's ever an emergency on a plane. But I've flown at least 30 times, and there's never been any emergency. The worst I ever had was that we sat in the runway for 4 hours once.
Oh, Lordy.
It was iced up, so they had to de-ice the plane. But like being stuck in the airplane for 4 hours was not an enjoyable experience for a 1 hour flight, by the way.
And then, I mean, turbulence can...
It's pretty mad.
And then turbulence can get bad, but it's
just the plane shaking. It's fine.
Yeah.
They're made to do that. It's totally safe. It might be annoying at the time, for sure.
Yeah, because like if
don't worry too much.
Yeah, because if like you're reading a book and the plane shakes, you're gonna be jostled around a lot, but it's fine. The noise of the turbulence is kind of like, if it gets real bad, I start to get nervous, but because it's just like,
most of the sound is also just people's bags and luggage shaking around in the compartments.
Oh, good point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that's usually what that sound is during turbulence, which is like, that's not the plane rattling, that's someone's bag.
Exactly.
Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's any other plane etiquette. I guess also if you're bringing on a carry-on, if it's small enough to fit between your legs, most flights will let you put it between your legs.
Yeah.
But if it's any bigger than that, put it above in the compartment above the seating area.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't try to force it between your legs or in your seat. It's just going to make you uncomfortable. It's going to make the person next to you uncomfortable. Just put it in the compartment.
Exactly. So we've covered domestic flights. Let's talk about
international flights. Yeah.
Well, what about international travel in general?
I mean, international travel. We kind of talked about crossing borders.
True, but
so I think flights are really the next step, because international flights are actually pretty different than domestic flights.
Yes, but something I did want to point out is getting a passport.
Oh yeah.
Getting a. I don't know if this has changed since COVID.
Yeah,
but
I don't know the rules now.
So, because before COVID, you could go to a specific post office that has the passport, printing picture capabilities, and then you can just do it there.
Do everything you need, yeah.
But since COVID, I'm not sure if that's still the case. And also, I mean, granted, I had to renew my passport a few months ago, and you can do it online through the State Department. You just be like, all right, here's my information, here's my passport, here's my old passport number that I'm trying to replace, here's my social, here's yada yada yada. And so make sure your passport's up to date whenever you are internationally traveling.
Yes, if you're traveling internationally, make sure your passport's good. That would be the last thing you want, to land where you're supposed to go and then get denied after landing because your passport is expired.
Exactly.
Because that would mean then you'd have to stay in the airport and then immediately fly back. You have no other options, which sucks.
Yeah, that's not something I want to happen.
Yeah.
Ever.
So make sure your passport's in order before you leave.
Yes. All right, so international flights.
International flights can be interesting. It depends on what flight you're taking, where you're going.
Yes.
But like a prime example, flight to Dubai. If you're taking a flight to Dubai, the airplane has rules specific to Dubai Air.
How so?
You're not allowed to wear shorts. You're not allowed to wear dresses. You're not allowed to wear jeans. You're not allowed to wear hats.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why hats?
Yeah. I don't know. Culture.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, you have to dress nice. I think it's more like a Dubai, no offense to Dubai, but pretension. Where it's like they expect everyone to be khakis and like business casual at best or at worst.
That's dumb.
So you have to dress nice.
Okay.
So be aware of that. If you're flying to a different country, the flight and the country itself may have different rules. It's actually my friend who took that flight to Dubai. It was really funny that on the way to Dubai, they had to dress nice. And then when they were leaving, once they were out of Dubai, they allowed them to dress back down. So she bought a change of clothing to change on the airplane since it's such a long flight. She wanted to be more comfortable.
That's fair.
But yeah, just be aware that there are rules depending on what country you're going to, and be aware of the rules of the airport of the country you're going to. So like, the flight might not restrict how you dress, but once you're in the other country, they might not restrict how you dress, but you might look like a jerk. Like you might they might treat you differently because you dress down or dress differently than they intended.
And then for every international flight, they will give you paperwork to fill out.
Yes.
Which they'll provide pens and pencils, and then for you to fill out the paperwork on your own. Is that visa paperwork, or is that just form, or is that like, what's the specific form called?
I don't actually know what it's called, but it's essentially just proof of verification of identity and things like that, to prove that you're there and you are who you say you are and your passport's valid and all that stuff.
Yes.
So that the country you're going to, you're not just like some random, person showing up in this other country.
Yes. So you will have to have that paperwork filled out by the time you go through customs, but considering during the time when they give out that paperwork, during the flight, the length of the flight, how long it takes to get to customs, and then to get through customs, it should be just fine. And then, they're going to ask you, why are you in this country? Just say, business, pleasure, something else, and then just say that. I'll give 2 examples. One, so when I traveled to Cuba, so this is so we had my dad and I went to Cuba in 2017, and we were told by our American tour guide, was like, okay, this is the one form we're going to give you. You have to fill this out. You have to fill it out correctly, because if not, you're going to be stuck in Cuba, and that's a whole big thing because they don't supply those forms. Like, the U.S. has to supply those forms, and it's a whole thing.
They'll ship it here. You'll be stuck in the airport for multiple days.
Yes, and so we were very careful about that. But then once we got to Cuba, and it got to go for us to go through customs, the customs person was like, stamp, move on. I was like, so even in Cuba they don't give a shit, because our customs doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, but like, it might be random. You never know, because sometimes it's like, just be prepared for the worst.
So, but that was going into Cuba. Coming back from Cuba, we provided the same paperwork, and then the U.S. customs person was like, why were you in Cuba? Mm-hmm. Legally, and this is what I told him, legally it's for a cultural exchange, and so and that's why we were there, and that's why we came back, and we brought some stuff back with us, but it wasn't really something we needed to clear with the customs person, so nothing wrong there. And then I have been traveled to and from Mexico a little over a dozen times. Mm-hmm. Same deal. They'll give you the paperwork, you have to fill it before you get to customs, and then they'll ask you why you're here. I'm on vacation. Okay, stamp, be on your way.
Yeah. And for the most part, it's pretty simple. Just make sure you know like the customs rules for the country you're going to or leaving from.
Yeah, because some countries are more relaxed than others, like you mentioned with Dubai. And then regarding, like some countries, like I don't think Canada, if you're traveling to and from Canada, I don't think they're going to care that much. But if you're going to a place like that is a lot more culturally sensitive, like the Middle East or what's the word?
Yeah. The Middle East or Dubai. Like there's plenty of places that like the culture is radically different from where you're going.
Yes.
Coming from. And you need to be aware of how the culture is and what the norms are.
Yes.
Not just for the flight and for like standards, but just to make sure like you know where you're going.
Yes. And then
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish that thought because I was going to transition us.
I had a friend who had traveled to South Africa because he's an engineer and that's where he was working. That's where his contract was. And in South Africa, he had to make sure to look up a lot of information because like the way things are in South Africa is there's a morning radio report in a lot of parts of South Africa that tell you like, hey, don't go to this part of town. There's been 4 muggings today.
Oh, wow.
Little things like that. Like, it sounds crazy, but make sure to look up little things like that because that stuff can really be important once you're there.
Yeah.
Even just simple things like just knowing where to go eat or the health value. Like, I'm sure you've heard this, or most people have, but like, go to Mexico, don't drink the tap water. The tap water is meant for cleaning, not for drinking. Little things like that are important to know just to make sure you're prepared for your trip.
That, and on the subject of Mexico, the sodas are going to taste different. The milk is going to taste different.
Better.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Okay, we might have differing opinions. The sodas definitely taste
better.
Better.
Oh, I agree on that. Mexican Sprite, so good.
Yeah.
So good. But, knowing that, okay, so I want to when you're going to a different country, that I want to talk about how to navigate a country that has a different language. Like I mentioned, Cuba and Mexico. I do not speak fluent Spanish, but based on the little Spanish I know, I can pick up on context clues. Like I know that aeropuerto means airport.
Yeah.
And then I'm familiar enough with the Cancun area to where, like, okay, this road is where like most of the hotels are. This road is how to get to the airport. This road, if I take this, is how to get to like the Cancun city proper. This one takes me elsewhere, etc. So, yeah. So, what would you recommend an autistic person does who's already nervous about traveling, going to a country where their native language is not spoken?
Number one, especially if you speak English primarily, a lot of countries and a lot of touristy places like Cancun, pretty much everyone you run into will speak English or speak enough English for you to get by.
Yes.
But for extra like security and just assurances, get a translation guide or a book or use your phone. Have a backup option for if you don't know how to speak in the native tongue.
Yes.
Just so you can hard translate things to make it slightly easier to communicate.
And
people are not really that judgmental if you don't speak their language well. They understand you're from another country.
Except the French.
As long as you try.
Except the French.
People appreciate it when you try.
Yes.
So, try to speak a little the native tongue, but don't be too worried if you don't.
Yes. Or something that my girlfriend did whenever she traveled to Vietnam was she and her family hired a translator to follow them around everywhere.
Yeah.
That's it. And then it was a local, so it's like, all right, hey.
So if you're rich, you can hire a translator to go with you to another country.
No, I mean the translator's already in the country. The translator's just accompanying you. But okay. Anyways,
but yeah, that is an option. You can hire a translator, especially if you're on a business trip. Your company may even pay for one. I've heard of that happening many times.
That's also true. And then, you can't see this, folks, but our editor is just losing his mind right now. He's laughing so hard. But what's my train of thought? So, okay. So this is here's a true story. In high school, the high school I was with, we took a trip to Spain. Like Madrid, Barcelona, Toledo. Recommend all those cities, by the way. And I can't really speak for. I don't know if this was ever the. Well, actually, no. This was the case in Mexico. Not necessarily Cuba, but that's kind of for obvious reasons. But in these very touristy areas, if the main language is not your native tongue, you can go up to the staff, the host of any restaurant or store, and say, "Hey, do you have menus in English?" And oftentimes they'll say, "Yeah, here you go."
Yeah.
And then if in Europe or Mexico, they'll make sure to put you with someone, a server, a waitress, or whoever that speaks English.
Also, these days, Google actually has Google has a translation photo app that you can use on almost any menu in restaurants.
Oh, okay.
Food translates really easily.
Nice.
So you can just scan your menu and get it translated to English via Google, if that is necessary.
Yes, and then in terms of like if you're traveling internationally and you're not necessarily sure where to eat or where to go, you can Google there's wiki travels, there's travel guides, there's all different
local reviews too should show up, and even though you might not be able to read them entirely, you'll still understand what 5 stars means.
Yes, and then also, as much as we ragged on influencers in previous episodes, travel influencers that are advertising their
sometimes
place,
they give you good advice on what to go do and what to look at when you're in a different country,
or what not to do.
Yes.
Like they will say, "Hey, don't go there. Go here instead." So, yeah, just. So, I've been looking at Switzerland recently. Switzerland has been at the very top of my to travel list recently, and I've already gotten through these. I wouldn't call it an influencer per se, but it's a page that says, that's all about tourism in Switzerland. They say, hey, go here, go here, go here. I'm like, these are so many places I wouldn't have thought of on my own that I want to go to now. So, and you can apply that same logic to Mexico, to Cuba, to Spain, to Dubai, to Vietnam. Co-host, where's a place you've gone to?
None of those places. Mess with you. I actually haven't traveled that much. I've only been to Canada and Mexico.
What part of Canada?
Well, I've been to Italy too, but I was like a little kid. I don't remember it.
What part of Canada?
I don't remember. We flew to Canada to take a cruise ship to Alaska. So I don't actually remember what part of Canada we were in. We were only there for like a couple hours.
You were probably there. It was probably Vancouver then, because if it's a cruise ship to Alaska, it's definitely West Coast Canada, which is the province British Columbia, which the biggest city there is Vancouver, I believe. Yeah,
they kept serving us maple syrup everywhere. That's all I remember.
Sounds like a good.
That's not true.
Sounds like a good fucking time.
I also did learn that they don't have lemonade, Lemonade
What?
is like lemonade's a very U.S. thing. If you ask for lemonade in Canada, oftentimes they'll give you Sprite.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, that's another thing to know. Like
Just little things, yeah. Weird.
like, I mean, if you go to a place in a foreign country, they're probably not going to have chicken fingers as an option. You will have to try some of the native food. Which,
yeah.
what?
Yeah, I mean, you should try. Like, what's the
I
point of going
agree.
to a different country if you're not going to try the food there, right?
Exactly. Oh gosh, there's this.
There's two other things I actually wanted to bring up that we kind of skimmed over.
Oh, okay.
One, before going to a foreign country, make sure to call your credit card company if you plan to use it, and
Oh.
let them know you're going to be in the foreign country, or
Good
else they might
point.
block your
Good
payments.
point. Good point.
And
Good
two,
point.
if you plan to use currency, get your currency exchanged before you go to the other country.
Yes.
It will be cheaper to get it exchanged wherever you're coming from than where you're going to.
Exactly. A trick I learned is that if you buy your plane tickets before the to and from trip, if you buy your plane tickets with your credit card, your credit card company will oftentimes send you an email saying, "Hey, we noticed you bought a plane ticket from these dates. We're gonna put a note in your account that you're gonna meet in this country during this time." And then it's really simple. Or if your credit card company doesn't do that, you could just call. Then yes, do what Coast Extraordinaire says and call them and say, "Hey, I'm going to be in this country from yada and yada." Like this, that even works. That should also apply between different state travels. Like I remember, I was in.
Oh yeah, that's happened to me too.
I was in Nashville, Tennessee, and I had to call my debit. Granted, this wasn't credit card; this was debit card. But I had to call my bank that my debit card was attached to because they detected fraud. They're like, "Hey, we noticed some purchases in Nashville, Tennessee. Were all of these you?" And I'm like, "Yes, they were all me." And they're like, "Okay, cool, but it's better to not have to deal with that."
Yeah, I had that happen when I went to New York. Same thing. They were like, "Hey, someone in New York's frauding your card," and I was like, "Oh no, that's me."
I mean, on the one
I'm in
hand,
New York.
I'm glad my bank is letting me know because I mean, it sounds that could have been
Yeah.
an instance of fraud, but in this instance, it wasn't. So
Yeah, I'd rather them be more touchy than less touchy about it.
I'll
But yeah, call them ahead of time. It'll save you a lot of trouble.
I will make sure that it is in fact your bank's fraud department. So if someone calls you and says, "Hey, this is the fraud department. We detected some fraud in your account. What's your social?" Don't immediately give them your social.
Yeah,
give them something else.
Don't say that over the phone ever. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
If your bank's calling you about something, they already know your information. They don't need you to repeat it unless it's like your name.
Exactly. Exactly.
But yeah.
Oh, all right.
If you're anxious about being in a different country with different people, I think it's important to remember too that like people in different countries are more like you than you would expect. Like people are very similar no matter where they're from. So just remember at the end of the day, we're all people.
Yes.
And most of the time they're going to know you're from a different country, understand you're a tourist or, traveling.
and
they'll give you the benefit of the doubt because obviously you just don't know.
I want to hone in on that because sometimes the opposite is true. Sometimes they'll try to take advantage of tourists.
True, yeah. Don't be, scammed.
And when I was in Spain, a thing that our tour guide constantly told us, like, "Hey, be mindful of where your belongings are because pickpockets are a big problem here."
Okay,
Or
yeah.
we were on a train, like, "Hey, there are pickpockets on this train. Be careful," and whatnot. And sure enough, one of my classmates got pickpocketed.
Okay.
And so, but just look up on like any tourist place you can that says what are some local scams to avoid. If someone says, "Oh, if someone's advertising something or whatever," just know to say you can say no. They're not going to force you to do it. Anything. Know where the local police are, how trustworthy they are, and then I hate to just be aware of. How do I put this? Just,
stereotypes.
yeah, beware of stereotypes.
Like honestly, just research the country you're going to, and if you Google the country and people talk about how there's a lot of mugging or a lot of pickpockets, just be aware that is a thing that happens.
And then if you're going out and about and you're approached by people from the opposite sex and they seem very forward with you, just bear in mind, hey, this is probably a scam, or hey, this is off.
Yeah, it depends on what country you're in.
Yeah.
What's going on, where you are.
Yeah. And if you're traveling, and then if you're traveling with someone, buddy system. Just use the buddy system if you're really that anxious about it.
Yeah.
And then don't do anything that you don't want to do in a foreign country. Like, and when I go to Cancun, all I want to do is just lay on the beach. Lie on the beach.
Yeah, that's actually a really good piece of advice, especially for someone with autism. Is that when you're traveling, you can make like a big planner of what you want to do while you're there, or you can not and just be chill. Like, don't worry about missing out, or don't get anxious about having to do everything you plan to do. just make sure you're enjoying the time you're spending in the place.
Yeah.
Even if you do nothing, even if you hang out at your hotel the whole time and just relax.
Yeah.
If that's what you want to do, do it.
Exactly. Like when I was in Cancun, one of the things I could do is I could go snorkeling. I could go to visit Chichen Itza. I could, like, there was a museum last time I was in Cancun. There was a museum that displayed a whole bunch of Mayan ruins and a Mayan temple, and it was built on the Mayan village. It's like, hey, this plot of land used to be, Mayan quote unquote territory, and so, but something you'll see when you go into Cancun specifically is you'll see advertisements everywhere for this thing called Coco Bongo, and it's like a, I don't want to say famous, but it is the nightclub of Cancun. It's raves, not necessarily raves, but it's a nightclub. Like lights, drinks are flying everywhere, dancing.
Club.
It's a club scene. It's a very famous. It's the Cancun club. No desire to go to it, and so I'm not going to.
Yeah.
So,
if you don't want to go, you don't have to go.
Exactly. And then just keep in mind of what what's going on in the local news, like oh, there's a festival going on, so there might be more traffic, or hey, there's this cultural thing that's going on right now because of the local culture, so some things are going to be more taboo than others.
Okay.
No, that was it.
I was say, also, if you have like food, if you're very specific about food you like, what food you're willing to eat,
yes,
make sure you research what food they have.
Good
so
point.
Like if you're
vegan,
if you only eat chicken nuggets, or you're vegan or something hyper specific,
either
plan for that by like making sure you can go to the store and buy the thing you want, or just be prepared to eat different types of food, because food will be different in different countries.
Exactly, and the availability of certain foods will be different.
Yes, very different.
Exactly.
If you're taking a trip to Saudi Arabia, you're probably not going to find a lot of bacon.
Yeah.
Obvious stuff like that, but there's more, subtle things too.
Exactly. So, I think that's we've covered a lot about traveling. Is there anything else you wanted to mention?
Yeah. I think the main thing is there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to traveling, especially if it's your first time, and it can be pretty nerve-wracking, a little anxiety-inducing, and that's normal.
Yes.
Like, everyone feels a little anxious going to a new country full of new people and culture they haven't interacted with before. Just be relaxed, be prepared. That's the best you can do, is make sure you're prepared for where you're going and what you're doing, and then there's less room for anxiety.
Exactly. Exactly. Alrighty. Well, this will wrap up another episode of the Sperging Out Podcast. My name is Mitch Grace, and I'm the author of the book Growing Up with Asperger's, Lessons Learned and Shareable Wisdom, available on paperback and Kindle formats on Amazon, and also available on Amazon in audiobook format. And I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Extraordinaire.
Hey, thanks for having me. I've been having a good time.
And thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.